In the late 1960s, a police officer in Southern California radioed dispatch to report that he couldn't catch a suspect on the freeway. Not because he lost sight of the car, because his patrol vehicle physically could not go fast enough. That call wasn't an isolated incident. It was the beginning of a pattern that would repeat itself across American law enforcement for the next 40 years. Detroit kept building the perfect police car, proving it worked, watching departments fall in love with it, and then killing it anyway. Not because the car failed. Because someone in a boardroom decided it was more profitable to sell something else. Every car on this list was trusted by officers with their lives, and every single one was taken away by the same industry that built it. 7 cars, 7 decisions that had nothing to do with performance and everything to do with corporate politics. Number 7. Oldsmobile 88 Police Interceptor. Before anyone had ever used the term muscle car, the Oldsmobile 88 was already one. In the early 1950s, Oldsmobile took its Rocket 5.8, originally a 303 cubic inch block, and dropped it into one of the lightest full-size bodies in the GM lineup. The result was a power-to-weight ratio that nothing else on the American road could touch. The California Highway Patrol noticed. Michigan State Police noticed. And in their testing, the 88 dominated consistently in both acceleration and top speed, outrunning everything the other manufacturers sent to compete. As the years went on, the engine grew. 371 cubic inches, then 394. Output climbed past 300 horsepower. The 88 kept winning contracts and kept earning trust from the officers who drove it every shift. Then, GM made a decision that had nothing to do with the car and everything to do with internal brand management. Oldsmobile was told to move upmarket, chase luxury buyers, leave performance to Pontiac and Chevrolet. The motors got smaller, the suspension got softer. The car that had once been the fastest thing a department could buy turned into something designed for retired couples on their way to the golf course. GM pulled the 455 engine from the police lineup, while still offering it in civilian luxury models. The departments that had relied on the 88 for years had no choice but to look elsewhere. GM killed its own best performer to avoid competing with itself. 6. Pontiac Catalina Police Interceptor. Pontiac picked up exactly where Oldsmobile was forced to leave off. Through the 1960s and into the early 1970s, the Catalina with a 421 or 428 cubic inch V8 became one of the most respected patrol cars in the country. State agencies in California, Illinois, and across the South ran Catalinas as their primary highway interceptors. In 1971, a police-spec Catalina 455 could hit 60 miles per hour in 7.5 seconds and clear 140 on the top end. For a full-size sedan carrying emergency equipment, a radio, and a steel push bar, those numbers were genuinely difficult to believe. Moonshine runners in Appalachia reportedly feared the Catalina more than any other patrol car on the road. That reputation wasn't built on advertising. It was built on the fact that the car could actually run them down. Then, GM started the slow process of dismantling Pontiac from the inside. It began in the mid-1970s. First, the big engines disappeared. Then the police contracts were quietly redirected to Chevrolet. By 1978, the Catalina that had once terrorized highway runners could barely crack 105 miles per hour. GM didn't kill Pontiac overnight. They bled it out over 3 decades, and the police package was one of the first things they cut. The brand that had built one of the finest pursuit vehicles in American history wasn't allowed to keep building it. Number 5. Plymouth Fury 440 Police Pursuit. The Plymouth Fury with the 440 cubic inch big block was possibly the most intimidating patrol car of the 1970s. 7.2 liters of displacement fed through a torque-flight automatic transmission and a sure-grip differential. The California Highway Patrol ran them extensively, and during the Michigan State Police evaluations in 1978, the Fury 440 posted the highest top speed of any vehicle tested that year. Nothing else in the field could stay with it. That 1978 evaluation turned out to be the last time any American police car was tested with a big block engine. Chrysler was staring down bankruptcy. Instead of continuing to invest in the Fury, they replaced it with the Dodge Diplomat, a significantly smaller car riding on the M-body platform with a 318 cubic inch engine rated at 165 horsepower. From 375 to 165 in a single model year. Officers who had spent their careers trusting the Fury to keep them alive suddenly found themselves in a car that struggled to keep pace with ordinary traffic. Chrysler didn't phase the Fury out gradually. They simply erased it. 4. Dodge Monaco 440 Police. The Monaco shared the same B-body platform and 440 engine as the Fury, and the CHP adopted it as one of its signature pursuit vehicles through the mid-1970s. Where the Monaco earned its reputation was on freeway on-ramps. The 440 produced massive low-end torque, enough to launch a 4,000-pound sedan from a standing stop to highway speed in the kind of time that made suspects reconsider their decisions in real time. Chrysler's financial collapse hit the Monaco the same way it hit the Fury. The big B-body was replaced first by the St. Regis and then by the Diplomat, and the power deficit was immediate and measurable. CHP officers filed reports stating plainly that they could no longer close the gap on certain suspects during highway pursuits. Chrysler had traded officer capability for production savings, and when the last Monaco units were retired from service, nearly every one of them was crushed and recycled. Veterans who had driven them still refer to the Monaco as the last real patrol car Chrysler ever built. 3. AMC Javelin 401 Police Pursuit. This is the entry on today's list that almost nobody knows existed. AMC, the smallest automaker in America, did something in the early 1970s that none of the big three ever attempted. They took a two-door pony car, fitted it with a 401 cubic inch V8, making 330 horsepower, and sold it directly to law enforcement as an official pursuit vehicle. The Alabama Highway Patrol placed the order. A muscle car with a badge and a light bar. Nothing like it had been done before, and nothing like it has been done since. When emissions regulations tightened in 1973 and 1974, AMC simply didn't have the engineering budget to bring the 401 into compliance. The entire Javelin line was discontinued in 1974, and the concept of a pony car patrol vehicle disappeared with it. Of the hundreds built for police duty, only around 24 documented examples survive today. The Alabama Highway Patrol crushed nearly all of them when they were decommissioned. If you've liked what you've seen so far, subscribing means you won't miss the next one. 24 cars. Fewer than the number of Ferrari 250 GTO cars known to exist. Number 2. Chevrolet Caprice 9C1. The Caprice 9C1 with the LT1 engine was the closest thing American law enforcement ever had to a perfect patrol car. The same 5.7-litre V8 that powered the Corvette, sitting inside a full-size sedan with a purpose-built police package. Heavy-duty suspension, upgraded brakes, a 140-amp alternator, a cooling system designed to idle for hours in summer heat without overheating. It hit 60 miles per hour in 6.8 seconds. It had enough rear seat room to transport arrestees comfortably, and fleet mechanics across the country considered the small block Chevrolet the easiest engine in the world to service. Officers didn't just use the Caprice, they trusted it. And in 1996, GM shut down the Arlington assembly plant and killed the model entirely. Not because sales were declining. The 9C1 was selling steadily to police fleets nationwide. GM killed it because SUVs and trucks carried higher profit margins, and the corporate strategy had shifted toward pushing Tahoes and Suburbans. Several police chiefs wrote formal letters to GM, asking them to continue production. Every one of those letters was ignored. Departments across the country were forced to migrate to the Ford Crown Victoria, a car that most officers considered inferior in nearly every measurable category. 1. Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor, P71. For almost 20 years, the Crown Victoria P71 was the American police car. At its peak, more than 75% of every patrol vehicle in the United States wore that body. The reason was simple. It was body-on-frame, built on a traditional ladder chassis that could absorb impacts, jump curbs, and survive the kind of daily punishment that would destroy a unibody sedan in months. Mechanics could rebuild the 4.6-litre V8 with common tools. Officers spent entire careers behind that wheel and never questioned whether the car would hold up. Ford ended production in September of 2011 when it closed the St. Thomas assembly plant in Ontario. The Crown Victoria, the Mercury Grand Marquis, and the Lincoln Town Car all died together. The entire Panther platform gone in a single decision. Ford's replacement was the police Interceptor sedan, based on the Taurus, a front-wheel drive unibody that officers across the country pushed back against immediately. The concern wasn't speed, it was survivability. A body-on-frame car absorbs a rear-end collision differently than a unibody, and officers who had spent their careers trusting that frame had every reason to question what was coming next. When the final production year was announced, departments across the country placed bulk orders, stockpiling the last Crown Victorias, the way someone stores supplies before a storm. They knew what they were losing, and they knew that whatever came next would never be built on the same set of priorities. 7 cars, built across 5 decades, all of them proven in the field. All of them eliminated by the same companies that created them. Not one of these cars was killed because it stopped performing. Every single one was killed because a corporate strategy changed, a brand was restructured, or a profit margin pointed somewhere else. The officers who drove them never asked for something new. They asked to keep what already worked. Detroit has always been better at building great cars than it has been at deciding which ones deserved to survive. That pattern started in the 1950s, and as of today, there's no sign it has changed which one hits the hardest. The Javelin that only 24 people on Earth can still prove existed, the Caprice that GM killed while police chiefs begged them not to, or the Crown Vic that entire departments hoarded on its final day of production? Drop your answer in the comments.